What's good? Welcome back to the Interstellar audio podcast. As always, it's me, Seller. This week, month, year, I'm joined by Alfs, up-and-coming MC, man, been around the bush a bit. He's got an interesting career, an interesting personal life, and an interesting hobby. Let's chat. So, Alfs, tell me, who is Alfs?
That's a big question. Are we going deep and meaningful in this?
What's the persona? You tell me.
I mean, look, I'm a drum and bass MC / vocalist. I don't know, I get hung up on that term MC because it means certain things to certain people. But yeah, look, I was in the game a long time ago, and I was doing pretty well. And then I kind of went down the partying route rather than the making music and doing well route. And I kind of took a bit of time out and I did promoting and I ran festivals and I went back to university and kind of sorted myself out a bit. And now I'm come back round again and started making tunes. And obviously that's how we've been linked up and started doing bookings again. And it's all starting to pick up again. So yeah, it's a slightly different persona to it was when I first started MCing when I was 18. I can tell you that much.
So what was 18-year-old Alfs about? What was the persona there?
I mean, like, it's just incriminating lyrics, basically.
Yeah.
When I applied to go to university, I had to delete all of my music off the internet because the uni that I went to Googles you, and like all my lyrics were about like fighting and selling drugs and just things that basically you don't want on a uni application. Like you're not writing that on your UCAS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think also there's a bit of growing that comes with getting a bit older, and you know, I think I'm a better MC for not doing that. But it's also kind of a bit of a product of what I came from. Like I started in grime before I came into drum and bass. So I think that informed, like early 2000s grime was very much that, you know.
Yeah, super provocative, yeah. I mean, MCing in drum and bass was like that around those days as well. You and I are a similar age and we spent similar time in similar spaces in that kind of early to mid-2000s area. And it was like that. It was very chauvinistic, very violence-focused, and like you say, you wouldn't want that, but that kind of leads on, doesn't it? Because where I'm going with this is like, how does that change when you get to the age we're at now, and you kind of come back at things after you've got like a stable home and a stable life, and you kind of reinvigorate that persona? Like, what's different about the perspective now?
Well, do you know what? I had a real struggle with that. That's one of the things that stopped me from getting back into it for so long, because when people talk to me, I mean, like, every now and again I pop up and do something for a friend, like someone was throwing a boat party or they had a birthday and there's a set of decks there, or it's New Year's Eve or whatever, and I would do a little bit and people would say, hey, you should get back into it. I would always worry that it just like didn't ring true anymore. Like, you know, I live in a nice house and I've got a little French bulldog and I run my own business and I'm not out in a BMW slanging stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't live that lifestyle anymore. So it all just felt a bit hollow to get on a mic and say that stuff. And in the end, I just had to, you know, refocus and write new lyrics that kind of reflected me and the way that I live now. And actually, I think what I know what I write now is a lot better than it was back then. Because also, look, when you're a young man, there's also certain like playing a part. I think it's really easy to fall into that, like you said, chauvinistic, macho, ultra. But like that was the scene. And I think we've moved on a long way. I think the scene's kind of grown as kind of I've grown and we've grown and got older as well, which is good. And it's allowed me to come back and, you know, now I can spit. I've got whole tracks about mental health. Like that wouldn't have existed 20 years ago. You know, I'd have got laughed out of the scene for that. So, I'm quite lucky the scene's kind of got grown up as I have.
Do you think that kind of introspective MC is more heard nowadays? If I like reflect back on early days, there was a lot of shit talking about that kind of host MC, and not to like throw names out, but people like Loki or SP or people like that, you know, they didn't get the same level of respect as people like at the time, like X-Man or Shabba D or Skibby, you know, those kind of people that were giving it more of that kind of party speak. But now, do you think that there's more of a space for that? People like, you know, Vishanobi's a great example right now. He's writing real good, deep lyrics, and you know, he's performing more. And Degs as well. You know, it's all political, it's all social commentary, and for me at least, I think it's good that the scene's gone that way a little bit. There's still space for party and for fun or whatever. But do you think you feel more able to be like naturally you now, or do you feel it's maybe a bit different than that?
No, I do totally feel that. I mean, all the time when I was doing drum and bass and I was gigging, I was always writing hip hop on the side, and my hip hop was always a little bit more introspective. So I kind of always had that in me, and I just never felt like I could translate that over. It's also, you know, getting the kind of cadence and the delivery and getting people used to that. Like over the last couple of years, we've seen more people move over from grime and hip hop into drum and bass. And I think appreciation for that kind of half time and being a bit more wordy and putting some more lyrics in, and it not being about hitting a melody and hitting a beat and that kind of jump up style MCing, which was like king back in the day. So it's not just the space to be more introspective and write those kind of bars, but actually that people will sit and listen to your bars. Because in the old days, if you remember, people weren't listening back to recordings so much. There was the occasional tape pack, but everything was about live. But now everything's about streaming and about listening back, or it being on TikTok or whatever. So they want a bar that tells a story that they can sit and listen and connect to. Whereas in the old days, they didn't want that. Like, I would sometimes do this. I remember I did a gig once years ago, and I used to spit this bar about spit that with my ex-girlfriend. And no one was really listening to what I was saying most of the time. It just sounded good. And then some kid come up to me and was like, I just split up with my girlfriend, and it meant a lot to me what you said. And I was like, oh shit, someone was actually listening to that. Like, and in the old days, people just didn't really, like, that just wasn't the vibe. So I think the shift in like towards digital music as well has made a difference with that.
That's super interesting, because if you think back to those early days, my early days, you'd hear the same MCs at raves all the time. You'd have like Fearless, IC3, those kind of guys, like really good crowd energy guys. But you weren't seeing those guys on like recorded music. Recorded music was like Stevie Hyper or Fats, or more vocal heavy type kind of artists. But now that's almost flipped on its head, hasn't it? And that you see the same bars at the rave that you see like on the releases now, especially in that kind of like more deeper side of drum and bass that we're particularly listening to. People like Freddie B, he's on the rave, he's on the releases as well. It's the same bars, same provision over, right? People like to see that, like you say, that crossover, that appreciation now for the lyric has gone more beyond just something that I can shout back to when I'm off my tits. It's about drugs or girls or whatever. It's gone a bit more something that I relate to now, which is nice. And maybe I'm saying that because I'm now mid-30s and I'm at that point in my life where it makes sense to be a bit more self-aware and a little bit less narcissistic. But either way, I think it's valuable that the scene's travelled with us. We're all sort of getting older together, aren't we? So
yeah, but I mean, but it's not just us. I mean, look, if you even look at some of the releases, big artists like Chase and Status and some of the artists they're collaborating with, and some of the lyrical stuff that's put on there. And I'll still spit some stupid bars and some stuff that's still rave friendly, and like I try and keep a mix of it. I think that if you do write more wordy stuff, I think you have to be careful not to just do all of your bars on a set as well. Like, I know some of those MCs that will come out and they'll just do an hour of just back to back to back lyrics. And I think you've got to give a DJ a bit of room to breathe with that. I think sometimes that kind of short, stunted sort of catchphrase style MCing that we used to have kind of suited DJs a bit better. A drop would come and someone would spit their bar that everybody knows and the crowd would sing along with it, and then the tune would carry on playing. Whereas if you are spitting, 128 bars or whatever, you've got to make sure you're not doing that constantly. That's sure. The kind of balance. That's the kind of balance to find with it. And I'll still spit a couple of little catchphrasey things, and it's still good to have things for people to hook onto and to be able to shout back at you and stuff. Like there's still a little bit of that, but I'm kind of glad that we've moved away from that like question and answer style of like, I say this and you say that. That stuff would be crazy when it used to happen all the time.
But it was fun though, right? It was fun at the vibe, but at the same time, like it's a bit Fisher Price, isn't it?
Yeah, do you know what? It's fun, like, when you're in a Mitsubishi and you're in the middle of a field somewhere. But even when you used to listen back to it on a tape pack, I'd be in the car and I'd kind of cringe a little bit, But look, that's again, it was all about the live thing before, and now we've just moved on. And it's been good timing for me to come back at the time when people are more kind of open to those sorts of lyrics. And like, not everything I write is introspective. I've been doing a lot of stuff that's kind of quite dark and gritty and minimal, and like it's a little bit aggressive and stuff, but it is still wordy. It does speak more to my grime background and that kind of, like Stevie Hyper D was the man when I was a kid. Like, I went to his memorial, and Skibbity brought his mum out on stage, and everyone had the lighters in the air, and his mum cried. I cried. I mean, it's probably the pills, but I was like, it was fun. But yeah, like, look, the thing is, this kind of leads me on to a point I want to talk about as well. Is this whole thing with people have got a love and hate relationship with MCs in drum and bass, right? But the thing is, it's really hard to have a blanket term of MC. Like you mentioned two earlier, which I think are perfect kind of dichotomies of each other, which is like SPMC and Skibbity, right? And like the only similarity between those two is that they rap over drum and bass. Like, other than that, there is nothing similar about their styles, the way that they do it, a cadence, that anything like that at all. So just find it really weird when people are like, I don't like MCs, when it's like, well, what type of MCs on what type of music on? Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean, yeah.
When people generally tell me they don't like MCs, what they don't like is that hardcore, like jump up style MC generally. Some people just love instrumental music. They'd rather I just shut the up, which is fair enough. But yeah, I think I think it's just a stylistic matchup thing, you know. I think there's lots of different types of MCs. I think sometimes it's promoters' faults as well. I think sometimes you've got to book the right MCs for the right DJs and the right clips. And yeah.
Well, I think there's a bit to there. There's a bit to unpack, right? Because if you talk about, you know, there's people that sort of shit all over things on the internet and say, oh, I hate MCs. Why is there an MC at this? Right? You know, I'll go out on a limb and I'll say a lot of the people that say that, they've never experienced being in a rave, in a live DJ and live MC scenario, and really understand the value of what an MC is there to do, which is that kind of extra level of energy on, you know, a DJ is just a dude stood behind two decks, not really doing anything, right? You need that kind of like frontman energy. And I would say that a lot of people that shit on MCs on sets, recorded sets, they don't really get it because they've not experienced it. Now, that's not everybody. Some people genuinely don't like the lyric vibe, right? So you touched on it as well, like the art of the live show now is completely different. You take someone like me, for example, that's going to play like a mix of soulful liquid with lyrics, and then it's going to play some really filthy, disgusting, minimal stuff with some bars from people like yourself or other people like that. And then there will be a lot of instrumental blended in there too. And you've got to kind of be able to work with the DJ, understand the tunes well enough to kind of set the flow, but also maintain that energy too. And I think that's it's a fine craft to do that. I don't know, maybe you've got like some chat about developing that ability.
Yeah, I think it comes with time. I mean, the relationship with the DJ can really help. So, you know, if you work with someone a lot, like I work with Merds a lot, and obviously we do a lot of our like block-to-block shows and stuff around Manchester together, and you get a bit of a sixth sense. Like, I know what he's bringing in. I know how many, like, I just know when something's coming in. I know when there's going to be a little bit of a lull or when there's space for me to jump in. He knows how long my bars are, so he knows when to cut at the mid. So there was a little bit to be said for that. If you get thrown in with a new DJ, I think it just becomes, you know, an act of kind of listening and then playing off what they do. I think that a lot of MCs forget in drum and bass that you aren't the star of the show, which is hard because you have to act like the star of the show, right? You've got to come out on stage and you've got to be like, everybody look at me. Because like you said, the DJ's kind of hidden behind the booth a little bit. I'm the guy out the front with the mic in the hand going, everybody look at me, pay attention. It's a confidence thing. But really, there is no show without the DJ. Then people aren't just going to come and stand and watch an MC do a cappella for 8 hours, right? However good the MC is, your job is to back up the DJ, you know, and to flow with what they play. So there has to be a certain amount of like listening to what they do and kind of bouncing off that. And yeah, it is a skill and it does come with time. I think that it also comes with a bit of confidence in knowing your lyrics. Like I know a lot of young MCs, when they get out there, they're so and this is what I used to do as well. They're so nervous and full of energy and they just want to get their bars out. Like they just want to make sure they say it right and they hit every beat. And that's the most important thing. And I think sometimes what's going on with the DJ gets a bit lost in all of that sometimes.
I think the DJs can be guilty of that as well, man. Sorry to cut in, but like when you are nervous and you're like learning and you're just breaking through on that DJ side, you do just end up smashing shit in. I remember first set I'd done in ages, I was like about 45 minutes into the set and I was like, fuck, I've used all the tunes on my playlist already. And this was like a planned out hour-long set. And I'm like, how's this happened? I've still got 15 minutes to fill. But you just have that nervous energy of like, blast it in, get it in, get it in. It takes confidence to be more calm about it. I think that's a valid point.
Yeah, it's the same with anything. I mean, if you think about it, like look at like a young footballer coming through as well, and it's like bad decision making when they get into that moment and you kind of panic and you just do whatever comes into your mind. It's just taking that time to breathe and slow down and relax. And look, it is a scary thing. The first time you step on stage in front of people and you've got all those eyes on you, and it's very much, you know, the crowd reaction can like make or break how you feel about how that set goes. You know, if you jump up there and you start playing or I start emceeing and people stop dancing, it's like getting up there as a comedian and bombing and people aren't laughing. And then that kind of knocks people's confidence more and they go more and more into their shell. So I think it's just kind of, you know, having a bit of road miles, you know, having done it a few times, been around the block, and you just got to be able to calm yourself down and yeah, just do that kind of listening to the DJ, play along with what they want to do. But yeah, DJs do this with me sometimes as well. Like I can tell sometimes when a DJ's got a planned out set because I'll find a gap, you know, a little lull, and I'm halfway through a bar, and then the DJ just cuts into something else.
Yeah, regardless.
And they're not listening to what I'm doing. They're not waiting they could have waited 8 bars for me to finish and then cut, and it would have sounded awesome. But in their head, they've got 32 bars before they double drop into whatever the else it is. So yeah, I think there's a bit of that goes on. And then obviously that probably doesn't sound as good on the recording, which then adds to the whole like, the MC's ruined the thing. So there's a bit of give and take, I think.
I think that's valid. I think I'm guilty of that. I can take some learning for that because I'm very much like, I work in 32 bar sections all the way through a set. And like from my point of view, I'm thinking, well, get involved, right? 32 is always 32, so either you're in the 32 or we're going to have a problem here. But maybe I need to reflect on that a little bit, have a little bit more awareness of that. So I think valid takeaway. Just want to pull on something you mentioned, right? You're talking about road miles. You mentioned road miles, and both of us are people that took a bit of a hiatus and then have come back to the scene a little bit, over 30s mentality, right? So I know from my point of view, coming back to the scene with an over 30s mentality has a very different impact, both in terms of like personality, professionalism, and kind of business mentality. But from your point of view, maybe there's some stuff there from that you'd like to discuss.
Yeah, I think my mentality has changed a lot over the years. I mean, I did a thing on my TikTok about this where I was talking about, someone commented on one of my videos and said, like, why haven't I heard of you before? And I kind of explained the whole story about how, I was doing really well and I was getting bookings and I was doing a couple of different club nights a week. And, one guy that I was on a record label with got his tune played by Annie Nightingale's tune of the week. And we did a tour of Spain and we did some European gigs and everything was going really well for me. But the truth is that I was just partying all the time, never writing new bars, not working with producers, not doing any of that stuff. And in the end, I burned myself out and I wasn't really taking that next step. And to take the next step, what I needed to do was actually focus on my craft and get better at writing and work with producers and make tunes and do all the stuff that I wasn't doing. And kind of coincided with that, like, I just wasn't doing very well at life in general. So I kind of took a step back from everything. I went back to university. I kind of sorted myself out a little bit, kind of learned a bit of a better work ethic, I suppose. And, I went off. I was doing promotions. I was part of the scene that started and ran Strawberries and Cream Festival, and doing that side of things really helped me kind of see it from a promoter's point of view and kind of work out what the crowd wants and, all that kind of stuff that goes along with it. And then I started a couple of businesses and I have brought that same energy into now, working on this and doing better for myself, like blocking out time for me to work on tracks and do tunes rather than it just being like, oh, if I get a bit of inspiration, I'll write something. If I don't, I don't. Like actually sitting down and, like, writers will have a process instead of just having writer's block, just put something on a page and, make something come out of it. And you just have to spend time like working on your craft. And I think also sometimes when you're younger, you just think that you're shit hot at everything. Like I thought I was just naturally talented, so it would just come. But the fact is it's work. It's like any other art form, If you're a painter, you've got to paint all the time, If you're a sculptor, you've got to get out there and sculpt. Like you need to keep writing, you need to keep putting the effort in, you need to keep working with different producers and hearing different sounds and taking on different inspirations, and that's the only way that you're going to grow. So that's something that I kind of learned from work that I've brought into this, and I think it is seeing me in good stead. It's actually really funny now to then come back to the scene and see so many people in drum and bass that had that same work ethic I had before, which is kind of like, oh, I'll get around to it when it gets done, and it frustrates the hell out of me, and I'm like, oh shit, I used to do this to people. So yeah, I get it now.
I think there's an element of like, there's two sides to this. Either people are so naturally talented and so, let's say, they're hooked up in network terms that they can just kind of like make it happen like that, right? And then there's the other side where people have got to put a bit more graft in, make it work, kind of build those connections, build those skills, prove their worth, and then get the opportunities. And that's the same in every like job or career or whatever. But I think, when, maybe I'm speaking for you, but at least in my experience as a early 20s individual, life was not going well. You think you're the tits, you think you're the most important character, you think things are going to be fine, and then one day you wake up and go, this is never going to work, and every action that I'm taking is making this situation less likely to work. And you kind of have to have that like falling off the cliff to go, right, okay, fuck all this bollocks then. I need to be able to feed myself, man. Like I need to be able to have steady income and like a roof, right? And then you get round to that and you sorted that out and you come back and you go, well, I've got a bit of free time here, I've got a bit of free headspace, a bit of free money, like what do I want to do with this? And it's either golf or get back in the D&B scene, right? So that's the way it goes, isn't it? And you end up back here at 30 odd, like, all right, let's give this another shot. But at least from my point of view, the outlook's totally different now. Like there's no delusion. I'm never going to make success out of this. It's just about whether it's fun to do. And, maybe an ideal situation would be like it pays for itself. A hobby that pays for itself is great. But in terms of actual success, right, you're not going to compete with people like Chase and Status and whatever. They've been grafting, solid 4 decades to get to where they've got to now, and respect for that. But I ain't got the time investment or the talent to pull that off. So having that like more calm mentality about it definitely means it's more fun for me. And maybe that's the same for you, maybe not.
Yeah, I think if you focus on success as the kind of metric by which you measure yourself, you're always going to be depressed, because there's always going to be someone out there who's more successful than you, that's doing better than you. You know, I used to do this all the time. I would sit there and I would listen to like another MC's lyrics. I wish I wrote that. And I'd get really annoyed with myself. And then you go into a spiral of self-doubt and like, am I ever going to be as good as that guy? And that's really not, like I said, not what this is about. It's about having fun and enjoying it, and like just taking some pride in like what you do and the craft. And, you know, I'm not going to put anything out there unless I'm happy with it. And if I'm happy with it, then that's enough for me. And then I'm kind of finding that the more I do that, I'm actually getting more stuff out there than I did before, because I'm less worried about it being perfect. And I'm less worried about this being the track that makes Chase and Status notice me and put me on one of their tunes, or be recorded inside me, or whatever the hell it is that I was chasing before. And actually, I've just got more stuff getting out there, and I'm building up more of a fan base, and I'm meeting more people, and I'm networking more. And actually, if that is ever going to happen, that's actually a better way of approaching it, rather than, you know, setting out with stars in your eyes, like I want to be the next SPMC or whatever it is, whoever your like goal artist is, you know. So yeah, I think success is a drug, you know. There's always going to be a down that comes with that. So I think you kind of put that to one side. I mean, it's easier said than done. I'm still the guy checking like, oh, how many views did my TikTok get? How many likes have I got? Like, it's hard to completely separate yourself from that. I'm not zen with this stuff. Like, I still get stressed about these things, but I'm trying to be more mindful about that stuff.
Yeah, I think that's fair though, because there's always going to be like an objective, right? Anything you do, you're doing it because there's an objective, and you naturally want to measure like, how are we doing against that goal? Are we on the right path to succeeding? Is what I did today more effective than what I did yesterday, or do I need to go back to what I did yesterday? And like looking at those things like views and whatever, as much as they're not the be all and end all, they're almost the only feedback we can get about that stuff, right? So, you know, you got to take that social media sort of side of things on the chin, because right now it is our shop window. What's the objective I need to do from my shop window, and what have I tried that worked? What's not working? What can I do better? And, you know, you're someone that works in marketing. You're kind of naturally clued up on that side of things. Have you got any thoughts or process is that you think people should be aware of when they're kind of getting their self and their persona out there about how we do things in this digital age? Because it's different from when we used to go stand outside the rave and fucking, you know, rap in the toilets or whatever it was, however it was we got noticed back then, right? It's different now.
Yeah, I think that in the old days, it was all about networking in person and meeting people. And sometimes that was a downside, because certain little cliques would appear. There are some people who probably made it bigger than they would have done if their mate wasn't such and such from such and such label and whatever. And that used to happen quite a lot. Social media is a bit of a blessing and a curse. The blessing is you can be discovered by just putting the work in on your own and putting your stuff out there and, you know, getting picked up. It can be a bit of a curse because, like I said, people can get too down a rabbit hole with like chasing views and chasing comments and whatever else. But in terms of like advice, really just treat it like work. Not like work in the sense that, you know, like you're going to get stressed out with it, but just have a structure, have a plan, have something to go back to. Like you and I have talked before about like neurodivergence, right? I'm someone that's got ADHD, and the hardest thing for me is like a blank piece of paper. So when someone said to me, oh, you got to post on TikTok every day, I'd sit down, open my TikTok and go, what the fuck am I going to post about? You know, and then that would just stop me from posting anything at all, and it'd be sporadic. Whereas I then went away and like wrote out a plan of like some ideas of stuff that I can post, and I put a bunch of different ideas in a kind of loose calendar. And if I feel like posting that, I can post that, and I can record them all in a bunch, and just having some sort of structure to follow. Some people are naturally great at that. I'm not, and I had to kind of sit down and teach myself to be more structured and to kind of work harder at it. It's also because like there's so much advice out there for DJs and producers on how to make content. You and I talked about this a little bit before. There's courses and there's YouTube videos and there's people going, look, if you're a DJ or producer, here's how to make more content. But there isn't really that blueprint for MCs. Like my behind the scenes, I can't show you how I made an 808 or how I've made a respace or where I found my snares, and I can't, you know, do a live where you can produce along with me, because we were going to do put a camera over my shoulder while I write lyrics. Like it's not great. So I've been trying to find, you know, smart ways of, you know, talking about how I come up with ideas or how I work with producers and stuff like that. So yeah, I think you just got to put a bit of effort into coming up with a plan, and also just try and be a bit authentic as well. I think we went through that period of social media where everything was super polished, and I think people don't really want that anymore. Like if you want a super polished like social media page, go and look at your Chasing Statuses and your Andy C's, and they've got a PR company that do it for them. But actually, really, they're not getting as much real interaction and engagement as the people who are out there just being themselves and talking. I think people actually really value the social of social media. Like putting my marketing hat on, this is something I tell people that I used to work with when I had clients, is stop thinking about what it's doing for you and think about what it's doing for them. Like, why is someone scrolling? What do they want to see? What value are they getting out of watching your video or listening to it? Like, promoters are the worst for this, because promoters will just have a stream of 12 videos in a row going, buy my tickets, buy my tickets, buy my tickets. But the thing is, like, why should they buy your tickets? Like, maybe they need to look at doing a bit more stuff like talking about the artist or the vibe, or, you know, whatever it happens to be. You know, you need to kind of push the why rather than the what you want out of it. So yeah, I found that people are kind of interested in the process and how it all works and stuff. And that's been kind of cool. And like, my most popular thing I ever posted was me being honest about why no one's failed at me before. I did a whole video and I was like, I'm not famous because I fucked about. And people really related to that, you know? And
that's it, relate, innit?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think, you know, just try and be authentic and make a plan and stick to it.
So what do you think? So you talk about authenticity a lot, and I vibe with this as well. I tell people this all the time, you know. But I think if you'd gone back 5 years ago, social media would have led you to believe that the most important thing was to be like this kind of polished superstar and give off like successful vibes and whatever. But I think now more and more people want to see, like, actually, I'm like you. You know, I can grind the way you're grinding. We're all grinding. We're all just trying to make something happen. So like, how do you think it's important to balance kind of like persona and brand against like authenticity and that kind of thing? Like, you know, we live in the age of cancelling and all that sort of shit, but you got any wisdom about how to like navigate that kind of?
I mean, I think if you're being really authentic, I think your persona and your brand should kind of tie in. I think if you're trying to project something that you're not, that's always going to come across. I think the reason that we had all this problem for so long is that when social media first became a thing for artists, we were trying to copy the blueprint of like pop stars, you know, where they have this whole carefully managed, they go on certain interviews, their PR person's prepared their questions. I used to work in PR. I know how that whole game works. And you are the person that they say that you are, that you need to be for that particular, whoever your demographic group is. So I think that we kind of came from that, and that was the only blueprint we had to follow. And I think certain people have kind of blazed the trail with it being a little bit more open and honest. I think in terms of cancelling, I mean, unless you're a prick, you're probably not going to get cancelled. I mean, if you hold any views that are cancelable, maybe shut up about those. Go and see a therapist. I don't know. But yeah, I think that it's about being yourself, you know, first and foremost. And then you don't have to remember, what's that famous quote, you know, if you always tell the truth, you've never got to think about what you're going to say. I think it's just that. I mean, look, there's a difference between being authentic and just being messy as well. I'm not saying like, you know, don't polish yourself up. Don't, you know, put something clean on and do your hair before you make a video. Like, I'm not saying that. Like, it doesn't have to be as raw and as dirty as you being in some grotty studio at 2 o'clock in the morning with cans of Red Bull everywhere. Like, yeah, be the best version of yourself. But just don't try and pretend to be someone else. Like, you know, one thing that I used to find quite a lot with MCing is I would go to places outside of London and go to gigs, and I would meet people in the green room, MCs, and I would talk to them, and they would talk to me in one accent, and then they'd get on stage and they'd MC in my accent. And that always used to blow my mind. I'm like, how do you just spit in your own accent, bruv? Like, so yeah, stuff like that. The social media, you'll get found out for that, like, much more quickly these days. So maybe that's actually forcing people to be a bit more honest about who they are. Also, I love it when people rap in an accent. Like, well, I mean, my accents on tracks just sound better. I love that we've got more of appreciation for that now, and not everyone's trying to put on Mockney wherever you go.
Yeah, well, we originally trying to have that US hip hop vibes, right? And then we get that kind of London vibe, and the scene's very, you know, Black London MC kind of culture, and that has a specific sound, doesn't it? So I think we, as a scene, both on the vocalist side and the musical side, we're very guilty of like wanting the music to fit into the box. Like, if it doesn't sound the same, it doesn't sound right. So it's super hard to like sound individual and original, whilst also being accepted by the scene. If you go, and I'm guilty of this, if I get a demo in that's like well experimental, no matter how much I like it, like, I'm probably not going to sign it because I need my music to feel like cohesive and sort of like it fits in the scene. And, you know, we've probably been a bit guilty of that over 20 years of just trying to like fit the mold a bit too much, and people wanting to push the boundaries a little bit. I think you're a bit of a rarity in the fact that you're sort of MC persona, you know, you're called Alfs, right? And your name is Alfie, and you're very much just like, you are who you are, and your lyrics are like that. And it doesn't seem to be anything that comes across about like a character side of it. Whereas, you know, some, especially in times gone by, I mean, when I started out, my DJ names are things like Havoc and Militia, and like there's a character that goes with that. And, like, I'm just some fucking nerdy kid from Oxfordshire that like did science at school, you know, not no bloody revolutionary. So you kind of lose all that. Exactly. You kind of let all that shit wash over you and start playing Liquid instead of all this fucking nosebleed jump up. But I don't know what my point is, but yeah.
No, but I did the same thing. Like, you're saying that I am that now, but that's something that came with getting older and coming back to it. Like, I've had a raft of MC names. And when I first started as a teenager, I was MC Moon just because of Alfie Moon, and everyone used to call me Mooney at school. So that was an easy one. And then I was called My MC for a long time because I was working with this DJ who also had like a really, it's like Taipan, some sort of like angry snake name. And he got us booked for like a run of club nights somewhere. And he was like, what's your MC called? And I kept changing my name. And he went, oh, he's just My MC. So they put me on the flyer as My MC. And that stuck for like 10 years.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. And do you know what? The thing is, people still remember me as that. Like, I met a guy a little while ago at a party. And he was like, I swear, I used to know a guy who looked like you called My MC. And I was like, no, that is me. I just changed the name.
I love that.
But yeah, like, I used to try and play up to that a little bit as well. Like, I have a bit of a, like, I do come from a rough area and I did kind of grow up around all that stuff, but that was never really me. And I did play up to it a little bit in bars sometimes. But that is kind of how, and I was trying to fit into that box and play up to that character. And the thing is also, like, I'm sure you've been in green rooms as well before, where like it's a bit intimidating. You know, when you're a 17, 18-year-old kid and you've got your, you know, your Icy Freeze, or he's probably not a great example because he's like the loveliest guy ever, but there are some like kind of scary, or there used to be some quite scary like Bassman and Trigger and stuff like that. You're in agreement with them and you're 17, 18 years old. You're trying to act up to that because you don't want to seem intimidated, you know? So
yeah, for sure.
And I'm kind of glad that is dying out, you know? Not that there's anything wrong with those MCs, and they are living their truth. Like, they're, you know, Brummy boys, they're just reflecting their background and where they come from. But I'm glad that there's more of this, like you were saying, like Degs and some other people like that are being a bit more honest about who they are and what they want to talk about. I think it's only going to be good for the scene, and it's only good as like a better example for like people listening to it as well. Like, it's nice for it to be a break from it just being all like misogynism, violence, drugs, you know, which is basically the three pillars of drum and bass MCing for time immemorial, you know.
Oh yeah, the scene in itself. You talk about intimidating green rooms, man. Like, the dance floor was the same. I remember when I was first getting into it, 18, 19 years old, and you really, you know, I'm a nerdy kid from a quiet town in Oxfordshire, right? You're going into these grimy clubs, man, and there's some sort of people there. You've never really spent much time with people that are like that. And the dance floor's not welcoming, and you're sort of like, you're hearing all the stories, and you know, you've listened to rave tapes where fucking grenades have gone off and shit like this in the rave, and you're just like, yeah. You know, you're going into that scenario, you've got to be like, pump yourself up to be whatever you can be, and that, you know, I'm glad that's kind of wearing off. We're moving into a stage now where I think people are taking pride in making the dance floor welcoming rather than taking pride in being like a big intimidating force. And like, I, for one, I'm very glad of that. And I think that that's a welcome change in our scene, and we should maintain that and not let that part of the culture be lost. But, you know, the flip of that is people talk about the gentrification of drum and bass. Like, are we losing all the sharp edges? What was it? Goldie posted up yesterday about that Dimension tune, drum and bass, about all the sharp edges. And there's validity to that. I get it. So like, how do we balance that? You got any thoughts on how we balance that shit?
I mean, I never really found dance floors and drum and bass intimidating, but then I used to go to grime nights in London as a kid. So
I did not. I did not.
I used to go to grime nights at Stratford Rex, and if anyone has been to Stratford Rex for a grime night, they'll know you used to wear your Averex jacket with no t-shirt on underneath because you would be too scared to take your jacket off in case someone tried to rob you for it.
Right.
There'd be ambulances outside waiting for people. I was in there once and some kid got stabbed and they didn't even stop the music or switch the lights, and they just dragged him out and kept the tunes going. Like, it was Wild West in those days. Awful. I'm glad that it's not really like that anymore. But yeah, I do think, look, I didn't see that thing from Goldie. I'd like to see that. Goldie's always got a bit of a hot take, but you know, Goldie's had a few too many sharp edges in his time. We've all heard the stories about some of the stuff that Goldie used to go up to. I know he's Mr. Yoga or Mr. Peace and Vibes now. But yeah, there is maybe a middle ground. Like, I do get a bit annoyed with the gentrification drum and bass, but that's been going on for a long time. I went to a gig at the Coven, and I know you used to be a long time Coven fan and DJ. When Pendulum first started getting big, and I was there with my girlfriend, and we were dancing around to some Clips tune, some crazy jump up tune that we was into at the time. And my girlfriend knocked into this girl, and this girl was like, "Ugh, what are you doing?" And my girlfriend was like, "It's a drum and bass rave. Like, people bash into you." And she was like, "I'm just here to see Pendulum." And like that. And that was happening then, and I can only imagine how much it happens now. Like, people that go to a rave to hear that one Chasing Status tune that they know off Radio 1 or whatever, like, I guess that it is still out there and it's still happening. I mean, I'm not really going to those sorts of events anymore, so maybe I'm not seeing it, but I don't really know how you balance it out. I think, grime has had a problem with this with years gone past as well. You want your artists to do well, and you want to, chart, and you want people to make money out of it, and you want them to go on and win awards and do all of that stuff. But part of what comes with that is you have to accept a crowd that isn't just from your postcode, there's never going to be enough people in Hackney to make you a star. You're going to have to, go out to the home counties and bring other people in. So it's always going to happen. I don't know how they're going to balance it out. I'm not sure that we need to make it like rougher again, but yeah, I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is to that. And also probably I've been part of the problem because Strawberries and Cream Festival, you have 100% me selling grime and drum and bass artists to posh Cambridge students.
Listen, mate, if the market's there, man, secure the bag, innit? That's what we've got to do, right?
It was very much there. I mean, they didn't let me pick the lineups. The year that we had Nelly, I was opting for Ghostface Killer, and we would never have sold as many tickets for Ghostface as we would for Nelly. So they actually never let me anywhere near the lineups. I just did the marketing because I would have picked very different choices that probably wouldn't have been as crowd friendly.
All right, so I did have two things I wanted to talk to you about. So both kind of tied together. I wanted to talk about your process a little bit. So obviously you've got a bit of a make-do attitude to like recording, right? At the moment, just making things happen for fun, primarily recording like your closet and stuff like that. So you've got this kind of like must-make mentality about your recording. So I want to understand your process for recording, for collabs and for music and stuff like that. And then also secondarily, like how's that contrast with your process for live shows? How do you prepare? How do you go about it? How do you do it?
Okay, so my process for working with producers at the moment, I mean, look, a big difference on where it used to be when I was younger is that it can all be done remotely now. Like, I've been doing a lot of stuff with Grintax, and obviously he's in Belgium. I'm not flying to Antwerp every other week to go and record with him in the studio, which would be great. If he gets the budget for that, then I will go and do it. But yeah, for the most part, producers will send me a beat. I'll have a chat with them about what they're kind of looking for stylistically, what kind of sound that they're after. I mean, if we don't match up at all, then we can say so at that point. Do they want a hook? Do they want a 16? Like, what do they really want? I kind of treat it like working with clients. It's another thing I've brought from work. So I don't ever go away and write a full track and then bring it to them, because I've done that before. And then they're like, that's not what I had in mind. And I'm like, kind of wasted it. Yeah. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of come up with like a bit of an idea and I'll play them that. So like I'll say, look, send me the track. I'll do like 64 bars over the top of it. This is what I'm thinking. Do you like this? If they say yes, then my actual physical process currently is I've got a walk-in wardrobe, fancy pants. It's not really, it's just a box room. And a friend of mine's a sound engineer, and he said the most important thing was just having plenty of stuff behind you. So I've just got to stand with a little soundproofing thing at the front and a little pop shield, and I stand with like all of my clothes behind me. The thing is, my laptop sounds like a fucking rocket ship taking off, so I kind of leave it in the hallway, press record on Audacity, back in the cupboard, close the door behind me, do the take. If I fuck the take up, it's so annoying because then I have to go up there, set myself up again. I've been doing that all summer in the blazing heat as well, which has been horrendous. So, yeah, it's not really great, but look, it works. Like some of the sound quality that can come out of that is fine. I got inspired because I found out that original Pirate Material, Mike Skinner recorded that in a wardrobe. He lined a wardrobe that he found on the street with a duvet and just put a mic in it and just recorded an entire album. So I was like, if he can do it, I can do it. So I am in the process of building a proper booth for myself though in my office. So I'm going to like frame it out and fill it with soundproofing and do all that kind of stuff. So that'll come soon. But yeah, it's just a kind of make do thing.
I think you'll find that more commonly than you'd really anticipate. And to anyone that's young out there thinking about starting it, like there are a lot of things that you will have looked at and think it's like the gold standard of great, and you'll have no idea the fact that it was literally recorded by a dude under his duvet on his bed. Like you will find that way more than you think. So I think it's important if you're starting out, don't let situation or your gear be like a blocker to your ability to do. Just like do the best of what you've got, and if what you're making is worth it anyway, people around you will help facilitate you being able to do that in a better situation.
Definitely. And I've been trying to talk about process for that exact reason, like more on my socials, because it can seem inaccessible, not even just the recording, but like how do you work with a producer? You know, people think that it's this much bigger process and you need to be contacted by a label. Just go and talk to producers. Actually, weirdly, the journey that I'm on now started from a Reddit post. So I did a block to block and I cut a clip of myself out from some new bar that I'd done and I posted it on the D&B production Reddit, and I was like, this is me, this is my MCing style. Do any producers out there want to work together? And I had a bunch of people reply to that, and one of those people was Grintax. And then from meeting Grin, I made a couple of tunes with him, and then he's plugged into so many other people that they're going, sending him tracks. And he's going, oh, do you know what? It would sound great with my guy. And he's been putting me in touch with them. And so it's just, you sit and you have a chat with them. And like I said, you go through that process, you record it bit by bit. It doesn't have to be perfect first time. Producers are all just still finding their feet as well. Like more often than not, I'll meet producers who don't really know how to work with vocals yet, so it's not this big intimidating thing where everybody knows everything and you don't, And I felt that for a long time, and I think I blocked myself from working with producers because I felt like I didn't know the process and I didn't have like a mentor or someone to tell me. But it's way easier than people think. Like, just chat with them, write your bars like you do already if you're an MC or a vocalist or whatever, send them over to them, record it as best you can, and it'll get figured out in the long run. And if you really love it and it goes a bit better, maybe invest in some better equipment and whatever, but I think it's way more accessible than people think.
I think as well, as an MC, it's kind of harder to put down a demo. But I think something I've seen after chatting with more people as I've been sort of back around the scene this time is people kind of like get grasping for something to come to them so they can record onto it, so then they've got a body of work. But I would say to anyone that's like starting out there, like record your bars over any kind of instrumental music that's in the tone of the sort of producer you'd like to work with. Like, so if you want to make music that would go on Overview, then pick an instrumental from Overview, write some bars for it, and use that as a demo that you're sending around to kind of like communities or labels or whatever. If the people there like your like style, your like vocals, your wordsmithing, then they'll pay you up with somebody, right? So don't be afraid to kind of say, oh, I can't start because I'm just a vocalist, I haven't got any music to rap over. Like, rap over whatever you think is the best thing you'd suit on it and send it around, man. Like, people will be keen to hear it,
Yeah, exactly. Or, if you can go and if you've got a DJ that you work with and you can go and do a live stream, like I was just sending people clips from block to block. I was booking in block to block sessions, writing some new bars. I'd say to Merge, I wrote this bar over Problems by Dawn Wall. Can you play that in the set somewhere? And that's what it sounds best with. And he'd drop that. I'd do the bar, I can cut that clip out, send it on. Like, we have all those tools at our disposal now. Yeah, you don't have to wait for stuff to be sent to you. I really like that idea of kind of picking the kind of sounds for the label that you want to work with or the artist you want to work with. But look, good vocalists are in short supply. Good MCs.
100%. Yeah.
Like, I realised this because I've now got more stuff on my plate than I can handle. At the start, I had a couple of different projects on. I've now got a stack of stuff. Like, after this call, I've got like 3 or 4 things that I need to go upstairs and run in and out of the wardrobe to record, to send over to people, and I've got a ton of releases coming out next year, because if you find a decent producer and you put a good track out, that's going to spread and people are going to come and, beat your door down for more stuff. So it's like anything, you just got to take the plunge. It is scary at first, but just get out there and do it.
Fully agree, man. And, the demand is there. As much as it pains me to say this, like, there is actually some money to be had on the vocalist side of things, because vocalists are in a position where they can expect money for the recording. Producers have to wait for sales that may never come before they can recover their costs. But vocalists are in a position often where they can sort of say, yeah, I would like to work with you, but it's going to cost, I don't know, 50 quid or 100 quid or whatever. Like, we're not talking change your life amounts of money, but there potentially is that different angle for vocalists as compared to producers who are making it from scratch, and they've got to then wait for it to come back from sales. So it's not it's not a bad thing that that's the case. So leverage it if that's the way the scenario is.
Yeah, I think that I generally am not someone that asks for cash up front, depending on the producer that I'm working with. So sometimes I will. Sometimes I'm happy to, if someone's up and coming, I'm happy to lay something down and we'll sort that out in the post or whatever. Like, again, maybe this is another benefit of coming back to it as being a bit older. Like, I'm not chasing money in this at all.
And your mortgage is already paid, right? So
not quite, I wish. But like, if I was, when I was younger, I'd have, because I was getting paid to gig live, if someone had come to me with a track, I'd have absolutely had that mindset of like, if you're not paying me, I'm not doing this. And like, I wouldn't want that to be a hang up for any vocalist. I think if you are new and you're not out there yet, then just work with producers and get stuff out there, and that stuff will come with time. But yeah, because, look, if a producer is struggling, they can just go and get something off Splice and cut you out of it. So yeah, just feel out the level, and as you grow, the opportunities will come and the money will come with it, if you're good enough and you're putting the time into it. But it's like we were saying about earlier with anything, it's all about practice. The more of this you do, the better you get at it. So yeah, I think it's way more accessible than people give it credit for.
Fully agree. And then what about on the live side of things? Do you think it's accessible to get booked, to find people to work with? And then how do you approach the kind of live shows differently?
That's actually been something that I've had to approach again. So when I first started, my live shows kind of came about from networking stuff. So I set up my own little gig years and years ago in the back of a pub. And I did that for a long time. And that's kind of where I cut my teeth. And I was bad back then. Like I had like 4 bars that I do on repeat all night. So, you know, I kind of gave myself space to learn. But then I kind of met an MC. So when I was down in Oxford, I actually spat some bars for Sandman, who you also know. And he kind of controlled the MC scene in Oxford at the time. And he knew my partner. And I just kind of spat some bars for him in the smoking area. And he was like, right, you're on the next night. And then from then on, every other promoter's like, right, you're on my night, you're on my night, you're on my night. And then it just became a thing that if you did a drum and bass night in Oxford, I was generally booked for it.
Yeah.
Because I was living down there at the time. And then, you know, you start to make some more connections. And that's the kind of way that it works. Now I'll come back to it when I'm a bit older. I've been out the scene. None of those same promoters are around anymore. Like I'm messaging them and they're like, bro, I've got 4 kids. I ain't running drum and bass nights.
Yeah.
Like, crazy. Like I'm not plugged into it at all. So I'm having to start that whole thing again. One thing I would say, and this is kind of how I'm doing it at the moment, is work with producers on different labels in places you'd like to go and gig. So that's like my whole vibe right now is instead of, you know, constantly doing like little gigs in the back of a bar somewhere, which is a great way to build your name up, especially when you're young. I don't want to be doing that every weekend. What I'd rather do is like, you know, I'm coming and doing Interstellar Audio in Nottingham next month. And then like a month or 2 after, I'm flying out to Antwerp. I'm doing a gig for Abyssal Records in Belgium. And then in the new year, I've got some gigs in some other different places. So maybe that's another thing that you can do is try and find producers on labels in different cities because labels will have label nights, right? So work with a producer, release something for them. And the label owner, if you're good, will probably say, come and host my night in X place. And you'll kind of get your name spread around that way. But there is also something to be said for just cutting your teeth on the local scene. Like if there is a small night near you, go and reach out to the promoter. Don't do the thing where your mate goes up to the MC and goes, my mate's really good, can he MC?
Oh, fucking hell. That's the one.
Yeah, I know. Look, everybody's got a mate who did a few too many pills one time and spat a bar and everyone went, oh my God, it's amazing. Don't be the guy who then tries to do that every drum and bass night.
There's also this flip side of that, which is where you've got like a local DJ that's booked on the event and then he turns up at the event and says to the promoter, oh, I'm going to get my mate to MC. Like that can work, but also like from the promoter's point of view, you've got no idea what this dude's going to be chatting about. It's a real risk to just say, yeah, here's a mic, bro. And so that doesn't always work. Like try and have that conversation before the night, not like on the night, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. So, you know, maybe they could, you know, using the example that you gave earlier is, you know, look at the sound that night does, record themselves spitting over a few tracks like that, and then send it to the promoter and go, look, this is my style. Have you got a slot for me? And, you know, start at the bottom, work up. You know, you're happy to do the warm-up sets, you know, happy to do 8 till 9 when there's no one really in there, which is hard as an MC. Like, I'm sure it is as a DJ as well, but like MCing to an empty room, it kind of sucks. But we've all got to do it. Yeah, exactly. We've all got to do it. And that's actually going to kind of help you get better at dealing with crowds as well if you kind of build it up gradually. But yeah, I'm in that slot at the moment, you know, trying to network and trying to do this whole thing online rather than it being face-to-face like it used to be. But again, that's another kind of magic thing of social media is that, like I said, you know, I'm having this conversation with you now because I spoke to someone on a Reddit thread like a year ago. So, you know, use that to your advantage. As long as you've got some recordings of yourself and you've got some talent, the work is out there for you. You've just got to put yourself out there.
Yeah, it's got to make it be seen by the right people. And also, you talk about the right people. A lot of the time, people that are responsive to you are the right people. Like, you could be thinking, I want to work with these guys over here, and they're not responding to me, and you could get disheartened. But like, maybe personality-wise, you're just not going to click with those people anyway. So like, when people do respond to you, you should give that the time of day because, like, you know, we didn't really know each other when we first spoke, but it turns out we actually got quite a lot we can talk about. And, you know, you don't learn those things if you're sort of set on this is my goal, this is my target. You miss the kind of receptive opportunity over it. So I think I was guilty of that for a long time, man. A long time.
Yeah, no, and I think also there's a lot of, you know, I think when people are newer to performing and newer to the scene, they may only know the bigger nights, the bigger labels, the bigger events. And if that's the level that you're aiming at to start with, you're probably not going to have much luck unless you've got an in, unless you know somebody there. It's just not going to happen. Like, I spoke to a kid recently who's a really great up-and-coming producer. He's very young and raw, but he's excellent. And he was like, oh, I'm really disheartened because no one's signing my tracks. I was like, who did you send it to? He's like, well, I sent it to V, and I sent it to hospital. And I'm like, yeah, bro, like, that's not going to happen at the start. Like, you need to work your way up with this stuff. But if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah, you don't know.
You know, I think that also there is more of a, these days, more of a prevalence of like labels running nights, whereas I know it has always historically happened, but there used to be a lot more like just event companies, you know, like accelerated cultures and all that kind of stuff and your helter skelters and that sort of thing. So I think that's the way in. I think like a good label owner like yourself is always looking for good new talent. So yeah, put it out there, talk to people. If they're rude to you, then they're not the kind of person you want to be working with anyway.
Exactly.
I find the drum and bass scene is pretty friendly. I think if someone doesn't got talent or something nice to say, they just won't reply to you. So I don't think there's as many like sort of Simon Cowells out there. It's an episode of X Factor. I don't think that happens, which is I think something people can be scared of. You don't want to. What's the worst that can happen is that really rejection in this industry is just not getting an email back. So,
yeah, it is. I think people are too hung up on like the big break idea as well. Like I was chatting to a young guy this week and he was sort of suggesting, how do I impress this guy? I've got an opportunity where I know I'm going to speak to this dude who's super influential. How do I impress him? And it's like this corporate job interview mentality about it of like research the brand. And I was just like, cut through all this. Like what's going to happen is if you get a chance to chat to this dude, if you're going to be interesting to chat to and he's going to want to chat to you more, or he's going to go chat to somebody else, like don't overcomplicate it. Be authentic and be interesting. And if you're not interesting, then work on being interesting. Like that's all this scene needs. It's just like real people with passion, and interest in doing what they're doing. The more we have of that, the better off we'll be, I think, as a group.
Yeah, and I think that brings us back to that whole point of like, don't chase success as the metric that you're going after. Do it for the love of making the music. Because like you said, if you're treating it like a job interview, you're going to be nervous. You're going to trip over your words. You're going to say the wrong thing. It's like walking up to someone that you fancy in a bar and, you don't want to put that pressure on yourself. Whereas, why should you have to prepare to talk to a fellow artist about the art that you both make? You shouldn't have to. You've got something in common to talk about. It should be easy. I like making this. I like the stuff that you make. I make this. How do you make it? However the conversation flows, it should just flow. I think the more pressure you put on an outcome, the worse the process is going to be.
I fully agree, man. Absolutely. Mate, it's a super insightful conversation. I could definitely talk to you for days and days and days. But in terms of this recording, is there any other topics you want to make sure we cover?
Well, I'm going to do your job for you. I want to cover the 14th of September in Nottingham and the Hidden Warehouse rooftop.
Well, you've got confidence then, because I'm like, there's no way we're going to get this out in the next 2 weeks. You've got confidence.
Oh, mate, it's right, mate. We're both product managers, right? We're just on each other to get it done.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. Look, if anyone watches this and it is after that, then just, follow the Interstellar audio and pages and look out for future events coming up because it's been really great working with you guys. You've got an incredible roster of artists. Everyone's so friendly and welcoming, which is actually really nice. I think that it would be a perfect label actually for people who are coming into the scene as well, because I think you do a lot to kind of like foster that sort of inclusivity and making people feel welcome. So I think that's good. And I think that's going to be reflected in the night and the kind of vibe that it is. The venue looks awesome. Hopefully we get some good weather.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's we're praying because it is on a rooftop. And I think it's not covered, is it? I think the DJ booth is, but the dance floor isn't.
Nah, yeah, it'll just be a shit show if it's raining.
Well, just have a couple of extra drinks and go with it, dance in the rain. But yeah, that's the only other thing that I want to talk about. So yeah, love to all the Interstellar audio people and to anyone listening in. It's been great meeting you all, and I'm looking forward to doing more stuff for you in the future.
Big up, man. I appreciate you taking the time to say that. It's appreciated. It's good that it's noticed as well, because I think, well, when I started this, it was about like, it's running a label, let's put music out to the world. I quite quickly realised that what's actually the most fun about it is you get a group of people together that are all kind of at similar but different levels, and then the people that succeed in this clan are the ones that like push each other to achieve each other's goals, and that was like an unforeseen something that I didn't realise was going to happen, and something that I really loved when I saw it. I was like, shit, this is what's great. So I have tried to foster that, and I appreciate that you can see that and you've taken the time out of that, and I hope that together and as a wider group we continue to do that, because it's much more fun than playing golf. So here we go for the next 5 years, I reckon.
Less golf, more inclusive drum and bass, but with a few rough edges. That's the
we've got to rough it up a bit. Yeah, I need some more minimal shit. All this floaty liquid, I need to rough it up a bit. But yeah, 14th of September, tickets are cheap. They're on schedule. They'll be in the link wherever we put these clips or this show. And Alfs, mate, I appreciate you talking to me, brother, and I will look forward to meeting you in Nottingham.
Much love, bro. See you there.
Peace.